autoencoder. Autoencoder are very important part of our neural network. What do these autoencoder do? They are used to reduce the size of our inputs into a smaller representation. See, we receive so many images, we receive so much of data as input via these machine learning applications. Now, these data, what we receive or the images that we receive, they are required to be reduced into size, some smaller size to make a smaller representation for it. So that is the function of our autoencoder. An autoencoder neural network, it is an unsupervised machine learning algorithm that applies backpropagation, setting the target values to be equal to the inputs. Autoencoder, they are used to reduce the size of our input into a smaller representation. If anyone needs the original data, then they can reconstruct it from the compressed data. That means what we are doing here, we are basically trying to compress the data into the smaller representation. An autoencoder, it can learn nonlinear transformation with a nonlinear activation function and multiple layers into it. An autoencoder, it is a representation of each layer as the output. It can make use of predefined layers from another model to apply the transfer learning to enhance the encoder or the decoder. Basically, we have in this autoencoder, encoder, decoder and the code. We make whatever inputs we receive, we compress it into a smaller size, and then we can again decompress it using our decoder. Basically, an autoencoder, it consists of three layers. First is the encoder, second is the code, and third is the decoder. Encoder, this part of neural network, it compresses the input in a latent space representation. The encoder, this layer encodes the input image as a compressed representation into a reduced dimension. The compressed image, it is a distorted version of the original image. So what is this encoder doing? It is compressing our data. Whatever data we are inputting into our neural network, it is compressing it into the smaller representation. So this encoder layer, it encodes the input image as a compressed representation into a reduced dimension. Now we have the middle part, that is the code. This part of network, it represents the compressed input which is fed to the decoder. Now this code part, what is it representing? It is representing the compressed input which is fed further to the decoder. Last we have the decoder. The decoder, it performs just the reverse operation of encoder. It decodes the encoded image back to the original dimension. The decoded image, it is a lossy construction technique of original image, and it is a reconstruction of the original image. So what we are doing using this autoencoder neural network, we are trying to compress the size of our autoencoder. We have different types of autoencoder which are used for different types of functions. So here we are talking about the autoencoder neural network that is being used to compress the size of our image. It consists of three layers: autoencoder, code and decoder. Autoencoder, it encodes the input image as a compressed representation into the reduced dimension. Code part, it will represent the compressed input which will be fed to the decoder. Now coming to the decoder layer, it decodes the encoded image back to the original dimension. So the decoded image, it is a lossy reconstruction of the original image. the layer between the encoder and the decoder, which we have just seen, that is a code, that is also known as a bottleneck. This is a well-designed approach to decide which aspects of the observed data they are relevant information and what aspects can be discarded. So how does it do this? See, when we are compressing the image or compressing certain data, our main function is to analyze that which part can be removed. To compress the data, we need to remove certain parts. So that analysis is very important, that what are the irrelevant part, or what are the not much important part which can be compressed. So it does this, the balancing, using two criteria: the compactness of the representation measured as the compressibility. Then it retains some behaviorally relevant variables from the input. So basically there are two criteria on the basis of which the code gets created. First is the compactness of the representation, which is measured as the compressibility. Second, to retain some behaviorally relevant variables from the input. So an autoencoder, it provides us the compressed output using all these three layers, and it whatever data is being fed up, it is compressed from the code, and then it can be decompressed again using our decoder. It can make use of the pre-trained layer from another model to apply the transfer learning to enhance the encoder and the decoder. That means if we want to enhance the functioning of our encoder and decoder, we can use a pre-trained neural network which can be used, or pre-trained function which can be taken up from another model for that is called transfer learning. So why are we using it? To enhance the functioning of our encoder or decoder. Now comes the various applications of autoencoder. Autoencoder, it has different types of application. The very first application of autoencoder is image coloring. Now we have seen that this autoencoder, it is doing the function of changing the images. So first thing application that where it can be used is they are used for converting any black and white picture into the colored image. Now how do they do it? Because if we are providing any black and white image, so depending on what is in the picture, it is possible to tell that what color it should be. So depending on that, we can do image coloring with the help of autoencoder. Second, feature variation. It extracts the required features of an image and generates the output by reducing any noise or unnecessary interruption. So even the purpose of feature variation, that means extracting only the required features from an image, that can be done with the help of our autoencoder. Third application, it can be dimensionality reduction. The reconstructed image, it is it can be the dimension of our image can be reduced. We can generate the image with reduced dimension. It helps in providing the similar image by reducing the pixel values. So this is called dimensionality reduction, where we can use our autoencoder. Coming to the next application, that is denoising image. The input seen by the autoencoder, it is not the raw input, but a statistically corrupted version of it. So a denoising autoencoder, what does it do? It is thus trained to reconstruct the original input from the noisy version. So we'll see one application for this denoising image also. How can this be applied? So we should understand here, denoising image can be done with the help of autoencoder. The input which is seen by the autoencoder, it is not the raw input but a corrupted version of it. So our denoising autoencoder, it is just trained to reconstruct the original input from the noisy version of it. Next application where again our autoencoder can be applied, it can be called the watermark removal. It is used as autoencoder, it can be used to remove the watermarks from our images, or to remove any kind of watermarks that we have in our images we can use this watermark removal. So these are the various different types of application where we can apply our autoencoder. So we have seen that autoencoder, basically what is it doing? It is compressing the images with the help of 3 layers autoencoder, code and decoder. And if we talk about the various application of it, it can be used to denoise the image, it can be used to for watermark removal, it can be used for dimensionality reduction, the feature reduction, etc. So these are the various applications of our autoencoder.